What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're reacting to an ESPN debate centered around the Chicago Bears, Ben Johnson, and the question of whether this team is really building something sustainable or if they need to start all over again. It's a strong discussion about mindset, culture, and what real progress actually looks like in the NFL. Before we jump into it, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL reactions.
There is no building off of this. We go back to square one. We're back at the bottom again, and that's really all 32 teams. If you feel otherwise, you're probably missing the big picture. You know, we're back at. We got to start from scratch. We got to start from the fundamentals.
Do we agree with Ben Johnson? Do they have to start from scratch again, or can they sustain this success?
They have to. They're starting from scratch, and here's the reason. He knows he can't rely on Caleb Williams' witchery in the fourth quarter to win all of these games. You heard him mention the fundamentals. The fundamentals play a part in the first quarter and in the second quarter in putting you in a position where you don't need 7 fourth-quarter comebacks in order to put yourself in a place where you're in a divisional playoff round. They know they have to be better earlier. They can't rely on turnovers the way they did defensively. But the way that this team progressed throughout the season, it's not starting from square one in this sense. Square one was where he was at the beginning of this season and in the offseason. This team knows more about themselves now and more about the players on this roster along with their head coach. They have an MVP candidate at the quarterback position and a perennial Coach of the Year candidate in Ben Johnson.
I agree with what you said, but I also love the fact that Ben Johnson has that attitude because what he's saying is he's not taking anything for granted. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Last season, this past season was this past season. They ain't got a damn thing to do with next season. You guys don't show up, you know what, we'll lose. We're in the NFC North. The Vikings ain't going to stay down. The Packers ain't going to stay down. Detroit ain't going to stay down. We got our work cut out for us. It was nice that we had the season that we had, but we came up short with one of the 31 other teams that ain't going to win the Super Bowl championship, and that's the reality of the situation. They got to improve their defense, their pass rush, definitely. Their secondary, they were decimated by injuries. They got to improve upon all of those things. But most importantly, you know what? It's the culture. It's the attitude. It starts with Ben Johnson, and he's letting you know he's already at work. There ain't no way he's going to sit on his hands and rest on the laurels of what happened this season. That's the attitude that you have to infuse in these Chicago Bears in order for the culture to continue to elevate. I love the fact that he said what he said. It was the right thing to say because it's the absolute truth.
Yeah, I loved what he said, too. And, Ryan, to go back to your point, I remember week 1 against the Vikings. It was Monday Night Football. The second half, they had a double-digit lead, and they let it completely go away. There was no fight at the end of the game. That obviously changed as the season progressed. They became this cardiac Bears. That's what they relied on. They're not going to be that same team week 1, and they're certainly not going to – you never know with injury.
I actually like Ben Johnson's mindset here. Saying you're going back to square one doesn't mean you failed. It means you're not getting comfortable. The Bears clearly relied a lot on late-game magic this season, especially with Caleb Williams pulling things off in the fourth quarter. That's exciting, but it's also dangerous if you think that can save you every week. Focusing on fundamentals early in games just feels like a more realistic way to win long-term.
And how the ways things might go. But what I know for certain is Caleb Williams takes away that last throw that he had in the game against the Rams. He knows he can't make that mistake again. So hopefully these kind of learning curves that they had throughout the season, and Green Bay, will continue into next year. But
there is no building off of this. We go back to square one. We're back at the bottom again, and that's really all 32 teams. If you feel otherwise, you're probably missing the big picture. We got to start from scratch. We got to start from the fundamentals.
That seemed to really resonate with you. The first thing he said, you loved it.
This is more important to me than anything that he accomplished on the field this year. He gets it. He understands it. Chicago, don't be Washington of last year that has all those comeback wins, and it jades exactly who you are. This was a football team that, because of the magic late in game, it overshadowed some of their deficiencies. I think the great thing that you walk away from is you know you got a great coach, and you know you have a really up-and-coming, promising quarterback that you feel great about. Can Ben Johnson take the Caleb Williams that he had oftentimes in the fourth quarter and get him to show up in quarters 1, 2, 3? If they do, they're Super Bowl contenders next year. But his understanding of, no. We are rebuilding this thing from the ground up again. It's a higher floor that we're rebuilding off of. But I cannot love what Ben Johnson said more.
To me, Clearly, it's the defensive side of the ball where they have to improve. What you can't count on is, what do they have, 32 takeaways or whatever the number wound up being.
And again, the comebacks.
That's what you can't count on. Well, and part of that is that their defense, they're coming back. The defense was bad but opportunistic. Usually those things turn around. You're going to become bad and not opportunistic, and now all of a sudden your season falls off. They should spend their entire offseason or whatever resources they have, the majority of them,
and they will,
to building the defense.
And they will.
I think they're in great shape, personally.
I think they're in great shape as well. And even that mindset, to Dan's point, is what the difference maker is with Ben Johnson and why we were so excited about him in last year's coaching carousel. When you look at what he's been able to do with Caleb Williams and his team, you know he's going to get buy-in from the team. That this is something to build on. He can say that all he wants to. That is the mindset he needs to have. But this year was absolutely an opportunity to build on. And for him, for Caleb, where he can get better is still playing within structure. He's so great outside the pocket in impromptu plays, but you really get the benefit of Ben Johnson's offense when you learn to play between the tackles and in timing and in rhythm.
Let me bounce this thought off you. And I know that I've heard so much.
What really stands out to me is how much they keep talking about culture. You can tell this isn't just about X's and O's. Ben Johnson isn't celebrating moral victories or close losses. And I think that matters a lot in a division like the NFC North. When you've got the Packers, Lions, and Vikings, you can afford to relax. I also think it's fair to say this team learned a lot about itself this year, especially about what doesn't.
They're a candidate for regression, and I understand the reasons why. I've seen the numbers. I know why people are saying that. But I also think we're always looking for who's going to be the next ones. Who's going to be the next ones? So what has the standard been in recent years? It's been Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. If you had to bet on someone who have the traits of a young Andy Reid and a young Patrick Mahomes, I don't think he could do a whole lot better than Ben Johnson, who has kind of taken this offense to a different place, right? Andy Reid took the traditional West Coast offense and morphed it into something kind of his own. I feel like Ben Johnson has done that too. Patrick Mahomes brought a ridiculous skill set. I mean, the kind of thing that almost no one has ever had in history, and then ultimately turned himself into a great fundamental quarterback with that. If Caleb Williams can take that step, I don't see why this couldn't be the next iteration of those two guys.
Oh, yeah, and I think this could be the next power in the NFC. Because don't forget, Ryan Poles, the general manager, has done a good job building a roster. He fortified the offensive line, Shefty. He's going to fortify that defense, or at least make that attempt to. I think the next step for the Bears, I truly believe this, the next step for the Bears is going to be, can you get Caleb to just truly understand misses? If he just gets away with, gets out of his game some of those head-scratching misses that showed up still too much this year, it's a rocket ship, and I truly believe it'll be an NFC power for years to come.
All right, we're going on here on Get Up. We have a message from our buddy Will
that somebody makes and somebody doesn't. And somebody's going to go to the Super Bowl, and somebody's going to lament the fact that they didn't make that play, but it's going to come down to a play or two at the end of the game, because that's how closely matched and that's how even these two teams have been in the past.
And so usually we feature the quarterback matchups, and we certainly will get to them, Stafford on one side and Darnold on the other, but it also is a matchup of, I think you could say, the two best wide receivers in the NFL this season, Puka Nacua on one side, Jackson Smith and Jigba on the other.
These two receivers have played the best this NFL season. JSN will be a huge part of Seattle's offense because that's where Sam feels most comfortable in every portion of the field. He's versatile. He can go over the middle. He can beat man-to-man, especially when they get in the red zone. They're going to go after him. And then on the Puka side, we talked about this last week with Devontae Adams, Puka, and Matt Stafford. It's like having three quarterback minds on the field. But Seattle defense, if you were watching, newsflash, they're going to test the middle of the field with Puka Nacua. Here you're going to see a dagger concept against their cover two. You got a through route inside of him, and now he's going to run a 20-yard crosser. Boom, big play. Next, you're going to see him now in the slot. Again, they're going to test your middle of the field when you go two safeties open. Same exact area of the field, different play concept, same result. Catch and run from Puka Nacua and Matt Stafford. Lastly, we're going to go back to that dagger concept again in overtime. You're going to see through route from the slot, Puka, big dig over the middle, catch over the middle, and run turns into a touchdown. For them Puka's incredible in the middle of the field because he understands the windows. He sees the defense the same way that Matt Stafford does, and Matt Stafford can make any throw at any given angle, and most times without even looking.
So over the course of the 18 weeks of the regular season, I probably had more people at this desk say at one point or another the Rams are the best team in the NFL than any other. And the truth is that over the course of the last 6 weeks or so, they haven't been. And Dan, the defense is the reason.
The conversation about regression makes a lot of sense, especially on defense. Turnovers are great, but they're not always repeatable. If your defense is bad but opportunistic, that can flip really fast the next season. I agree that the Bears need to spend most of their resources fixing that side of the ball. If they do that, and Caleb Williams cleans up some of those risky mistakes, this team could actually be dangerous instead of just exciting.
You put the numbers up, Cindy. I know people are saying to yourself, the offense hasn't really fallen off. From weeks 1 through 12, the Rams defense was elite. They were allowing 16 points a game. They were holding opponents to just a little over 300 yards. You see it there, 311. Since week 13, Dan, they've allowed 10 more points per game. Yeah. They've allowed over 50 more yards per game, which is a substantial difference if you are home wondering, well, how big a difference is that? That's a monstrous difference by terms of NFL standards. So I'm not worried about the Rams offense. They have the #1 scoring offense in the league. But why has their defense taken this step back, and what does that mean?
Yeah, one, they've tackled very poorly. It showed up again this past Sunday night against the Chicago Bears, but that's been a huge issue for, let's call it, the last 4 to 6 weeks. The other thing is the secondary just has not played well out on the perimeter. The corners played good for the great majority of the year, and then there's been a little bit of a revolving door at certain positions, and they just haven't played sticky enough coverage. Now, they turned the football over a couple times last week. Durant has the pick. Cam Curl, I thought, was sensational all game, but it's really the outside players. I think they're a huge key in this game. How they cover corner-wise against the receivers, JSN, Cooper Kupp, is going to go a long way to determining how well that defense plays. But I'm telling you, tackling, this is one of the worst tackling defenses that we've seen in the last month or so in the NFL versus one of the best tackling, if not the best tackling defense in Seattle. The Rams are going to have to tackle a lot better to play a better brand of defensive football.
It's the #1 scoring offense in the Rams against the #1 scoring defense in the Seahawks. History says advantage defense. This late in the playoffs, when the #1 scoring offense plays the #1 scoring defense, history says the defense almost always wins.
Yeah, and I'm going with the Seahawks here. I feel confident about them, not only because of what Sam Darnold has to play like, which I'm confident he will. And we saw it at the end of the last matchup against the Los Angeles Rams, but for the same reason you're saying. They have the defense here. Their test will be there because Puka, Devontae, Matt Stafford, they have been playing lights out. They're almost impossible to stop.
I think the winner of this game wins the Super Bowl. These are the two best teams in football. They have been the best two teams in football this season. I would say this. I think this game will come down to Clint Kubiak versus Chris Shulo, the offensive coordinator of Seattle versus defensive coordinator of the Rams. Sean McVay, Mike McDonald, they're going to have their battle. They're each going to win their moments. I think how settled in Sam Darnold can get in this game early matters. If Sam Darnold starts shaky and is not playing good, clean football, that's a recipe for disaster for Seattle. And then can they get him out of it? If that's the case, it's going to be a huge challenge.
I like the Rams. Shefty doesn't make picks.
Overall, I think this debate shows why people are so optimistic about the Bears, but also why expectations need to be realistic. Ben Johnson saying they're starting from scratch isn't negative. It's honest. It shows he understands how fast things change in the NFL and how easy it is to fool yourself with comeback wins and turnovers. That kind of mindset usually leads to real growth, not fake progress. If Caleb Williams takes that next step and the defense actually improves, instead of just getting lucky, this team could be a real contender sooner than people expect. Nothing is guaranteed, but the direction feels right. Let me know what you think about Ben Johnson's comments. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more NFL reacts and debates.